So let's talk about three things that are costing your prefrontal cortex rather more energy than you would probably like to be spending. So as you're now aware, you've got a very finite amount of resource there in terms of energy. And so the last thing you would want is to be accidentally wasting any of it on some things that you may be doing without even realizing. So what are they and what can you do to reduce the energy loss? Well, the first, believe it or not, is actually holding stuff in your head so that you don't forget it. Constantly reminding yourself that is it called an earworm, something like that, that you're constantly keeping a thought in your head so that it doesn't fall off and you don't forget about it. It's not costing you much energy, but it's costing you some, and it's a bit like having a slow puncture. You maybe won't notice a massive loss of energy, but just trying to hold that one thing or several things in the head over a day or maybe longer than that is costing energy, and it's also taking up space. So there's a very simple answer to this one. Get a second brain, as the experts call it. Write it down. Keep it somewhere that you know you're not going to worry about forgetting it. You know you're going to remember. And with all that modern tech that we've got out there, there are so many different opportunities to perhaps text ourselves reminders or set up calendar invites that are going to remind us of that critical thing at the critical moment. That way you can safely put it down in the sure and certain knowledge you will be reminded, you will remember, and you can plug that leak. So the second thing that's rather more costly than many of us realize is multitasking. Now, before you get really upset with me, I'm not saying you can't multitask or that you shouldn't, but when it comes to multitasking on complex thinking tasks, I would encourage you to at least recognize what you're actually doing. Because you're not doing two things at the same time. That's just actually not possible. What you are doing is swapping between two things very rapidly, so it almost feels like you're doing them at the same time. Here's the problem with that. Not only is that not optimal for the working memory, it would much rather do them one at a time, but every time you swap between these two different pieces of data, these two big files of information that the brain's juggling around, it costs extra energy, much more energy than it would if you just put one on there, got on with that for half an hour, and then did the next one. Even worse than that, if we're multitasking very, very complex thinking tasks, there's a risk that we might be losing out not only in terms of energy, but also quality and accuracy as well, because it isn't the optimal way for the working memory or indeed the frontal lobes, prefrontal cortex to be operating. So it's expensive and it might cost you in terms of accuracy and quality as well. Wherever possible, try for your heavy thinking work, your deep thinking tasks, to do one thing at a time, even if it's only for a short period of time, and then move on to the next. The times you can multitask is when you are doing one thinking task and one autopilot task. So one that you don't have to think about, like you can think about what your priorities are for tomorrow, for example, whilst you're doing the washing up, because doing the washing up doesn't require any thinking. You know how to do that. So you can multitask, but it's best if you mix one thinking task with a non-thinking task, an autopiloted task. That way you can make best use of your time. And the last thing that is costing you probably rather more energy than you might like to think is overthinking. Overthinking, if you actually do stop and consider what it is simply putting the same things onto your working memory over and over again to consider and reconsider the reconsideration. Every single time you're doing that, you are in fact using energy to do that particular piece of work that's not moving you forward. Now, I'm not going to say it's easy to stop overthinking, and you might also want to explore why you are overthinking, what's coming with it. Is it bringing stress? Is it bringing anxiety? Is it bringing concern? Can we tackle that? And yes, we will be getting into some of those topics a little bit further into the program. But first off, what you can encourage yourself to do is notice that you are overthinking, and then begin to start to say, right, can I give myself a certain period of time? Can I ring fence this? At the end of which I'm going to make a decision, a choice, And then I'm going to deliberately not think about that again and set yourself a time for at least an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever feels possible. Instead, I'm going to take an action. This will not only save you energy, it will also help you feel more productive and should reduce stress as you actually begin to make progress. So, 3 things that accidentally cost you more energy than you might like to think, and 3 ways of stopping them. Enjoy!